So the internet is a funny thing because the way it's constructed is what information gets brought up when somebody asks a question. And I think that we can lose the idea that just because Google says this is the number one answer doesn't necessarily mean that is actually the best answer on the internet. It just means that it was the easiest one for the system to find. Tell us about SEO in this modern age, because the last time I checked in on SEO, it was like 5 years ago, and I'm sure it has radically shifted since then.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what I've been seeing and what the search world has been seeing is that, like 5 or 6 years ago, you could still rank on, pretty high volume keywords with a small brand. But these days, it's not so much about, all the nitty gritty things you can do to rank higher. It's far more about, how big is your brand? And they look at so much more as in authority and trustworthiness instead of, this website is totally optimized for this keyword. It has, the keyword in the domain name and in the URL, blah, blah, blah. So it's way more about being a brand and then ranking versus having the best optimized page and ranking.
What does it mean to have a brand that like Google can see? Because it's different than having a brand where you put it up on a billboard and people drive by it. It's something altogether written for a different being almost.
I think how to be a brand is just look at, the biggest businesses out there and see where are they. So they're everywhere. So the first place Google will look is there any search volume on this brand name? So if nobody searches for your brand name, then you're probably not very relevant. Then second thing is that's been true for years is how many people link to this website? Is this a normal way? How do people talk about this brand? Do they own a podcast? Do they have a YouTube presence? Where are they? What are they doing?
Those get factored together.
Well, I'm not saying that. Let's start off. I don't have any proof of that, but I do think that Google is smart enough to factor stuff like that into, how important is a brand and how trustful is a brand. Yeah.
So if you're focused on Twitter and you've been really kind of thinking about how people use it in order that you can design a system for them to use, what is it that you have learned about Twitter that even heavy users don't realize is the way the thing works?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you can have heavy users with lots of followers, with 1 million plus followers, but they have shit engagement. And so there's a difference between being a brand on Twitter and understanding what resonates on Twitter. I think that's the most important thing. I have okay-ish engagement versus, I know a lot of brands that really have shit engagement. So they are more in the, and that's something you talked about before is, they just want to broadcast, this department wants to say this on Twitter, that department wants to say that on Twitter. And I think that's, the wrong way to go about. And I think, every time you share something on Twitter, you have to realize, am I adding value to the conversation or am I taking something? And that's, I sometimes use the term brand bank, am I putting something in my brand bank as in delivering value to people, or am I detracting something from my brand bank as in taking people's time with just a broadcast message with, buy my product, stuff like that, which, it just doesn't work on Twitter.
Yeah, I am ruthless about unfollowing people as soon as they start talking about things that are that cloud my thinking, right? Like I think of opening Twitter as like, I'm taking the most valuable thing in the world that I own, my attention, and I'm putting it at this box. So show me things that are going to make it so I make better decisions. I think about things better. And so when somebody's sitting there being like, look at these bagels I ate today, I'm like, get that shit out of here. I don't want to see any of that. And that's why I think almost no I follow almost no corporate accounts, because they don't actually care about the engagement or the interaction that I have on there. So why would I follow name the corporation? It just doesn't fit for the way I use Twitter.
Yeah, same here. I don't think I follow many brands. It's more like I follow like the Google Webmaster notification, stuff like that, because I want to know. That's it's part of what I do. But besides that, I don't even follow Nike, but I think they're probably one of the better brands on Twitter. But I'm very selective on who I follow.
I also think that they're like so. How do you get your news? How do you decide who you follow? How do you decide what's worth your attention?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do two things. So I'm also a little bit selfish, as in I look at how many followers does another person has, but I also look at you have a lot of people that just reply to your tweet. Wow, this is great, fantastic, blah blah blah, and then I think, well, thank you for the compliment, but you can also just like my tweet. And so I'm looking for people that also add value to the conversation. I also don't know everything, and if I can learn something from somebody else, that's if people put out great threads that I love, I retweet and usually follow those people, because I think you have something worthwhile to say.
Do you ever put content out that you find some people disagree with?
Yeah. So yes, and I have an interesting example that I tweeted something once. What exactly did I tweet? Something like, don't quit like a little girl. And the little girl part, that was, I got a lot of DMs from that tweet. They were saying, it was really about a gender thing, and so I got a lot of replies under that tweet saying, "Man, what are you doing? You're effing up your how do you say that? Your brand, your personal brand, I guess."
Wow.
People DMing me, and so you sometimes have to be a little bit careful about what you tweet. I think you can be a little bit controversial, because that also gets you engagement on Twitter. But on that account, and I've had people messaging me before saying what you're saying, but on this account, I decided to actually delete that tweet, even though I have a 6-year-old daughter. It wasn't about boy or girl, it was more about a
turn of phrase.
Turn of phrase. But somehow the replies and the DMs, they hit me. So I decided, well, okay, let's just remove it and move on.
Oh man, you got to be able to take the heat. You got to be. The other day, I was really annoyed because I put out this blog, and I used Hype Fury to take a couple of clips of that blog and run a short thread of it. I would never have done that if I was sitting there and had to do it right at the moment I was doing it, but that way I could set it up in advance. And because I put it out there, I got a bunch of like really good engagement. A bunch of people read the blog, like people wrote me about it. It prompted good conversation that I appreciated. And then this woman that I think is just like a nice person showed up and was like, I was shaking my head the whole time. This is, ridiculous. And then like the cascading on effect of being like, this is clearly just clickbait for a podcast. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm totally down for you giving me a response for what you don't like. Like, just tell me what you don't like about this. And the responses are all just like, this is so dumb. And I'm like, who takes their time to go around to other people's things and be like, nuh-uh. Like, so for me, I want people to disagree with me. I don't have a problem in the world but just articulate the disagreement. That's all I care about. If you're not going to articulate the disagreement, then you're worthy of blocking, because you're just throwing noise, like you had said earlier. I don't want people to show up and bark at me. I want people to show up and be like, this is why you're wrong, you idiot. Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.